Can you monetize doing different things all at the same time? Our guest today is an example of someone who is using all of her gifts in different areas, but making impact in all of them. And I can't wait for you to hear her story. Let's go.
Welcome to the Monetize Your Ministry podcast.
And you get a chance to interact with them. To me, that's full-time ministry.
That I happy because task without Jesus is like a thief. It brings in itself and then it opens.
I want to provide content and things that will help change lives, and I simultaneously want you to receive a blessing from that.
Now here's your host, Kamon Hines.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. Now, if you've been a follower and loyal to this podcast, you know we did something last week we haven't done for almost a year, and that is we didn't have an episode. All right, so if you've been following, we've almost made it to episode 50. I was telling my son who does all of our back stuff, son, we've been consistent for almost a year. And then last week, we didn't have an episode. Now, that happened because there was some vacation and there was some illness in the middle of that. But a friend of mine says, don't miss twice. And so we're back. And I couldn't be more excited about the episode we're going to have for you this week. If this is your first time, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, especially on YouTube. You can subscribe on any podcasting platform you're listening to this on, and be a good friend and share this with someone else, because someone else may be looking for an answer, looking for some inspiration, and this episode can be just exactly what they are looking for. Today, my guest is Shari Loveday, and I want to bring her up now. Shari, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how are you?
Awesome, doing awesome. I'm so glad that we were able to make this work. And when you hear all of the things that Shari does, you will understand exactly why I said that. This is a busy person right here, and Shari is carving out time out of her schedule to fit in this podcast.
Absolutely, and happy to do it. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate whenever anybody wants to talk to me, I'm like, oh. So I'm definitely always appreciative of any platform. So thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's great to have you on. So I'll say a little bit about you, but I'll give you a chance to fill in some of this. Shari Loveday is married and has two wonderful children, a college age and a middle school student. She's a lifelong learner and holds an associate's in early childhood education, a bachelor's in religion, and a master's in marriage and family therapy. She is a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist and owns a private practice where she specializes in relational therapy. I want to get into that. She's also a published author and recently released her third book, Just Between Us, a 31-day devotion for teen and tween girls. And soon she'll be releasing a 31-day devotion for tween boys and sports fans. I can't wait for that one. Okay, Shari, there's a lot more I can say. Fill in the gaps for us. Who is Shari Loveday?
So I am, like I said, a lifelong learner. And so I get very excited by learning, always wanting to stay sharp. And I started my career as a teacher in my early 20s. And then God called me to homeschool my children. So I did that for 9 years. And while I was doing that, I could finally hear the call to ministry. I would assume that meant a specific ministry, because in the faith tradition that I grew up in, the call to ministry means you're going to be a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I could finally hear it, because as well, in the faith tradition I grew up in, I could not conceive of being a minister as a woman. The thought never even crossed my mind because of where I grew up. So I did go back to school and said, okay, let's go see. Let's go see what God has in store. I would come out as a chaplain, and then I would youth pastor for a little bit. And while I was doing that, I was working on my master's in marriage and family therapy, and that changed everything. Like everything. So then I opened my private practice. The thing that I think I would say about myself is that I'm a God girl. So whatever God says, that's what I'm doing. Even if it sounds crazy, looks crazy, don't make no sense, on paper doesn't add up, I'm a God girl. So whatever he says, I'm gonna do. And that's put me in so many different spaces in my short life.
I love that. I love that. So a God girl. Well, Shari, you've told us quite a lot about being a lifelong learner and your private practice and your educational journey and family. But what's something about Shari that people would be surprised to learn?
I love the opera. People might be surprised to learn that because I am Jamaican and I come through New York City. So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And when I was growing up, not too many little Black girls loved opera. But by the time I was about 15, it was settled for me. I love opera. I don't know what they're saying unless there are subtitles, but I can feel the emotion and I love opera.
So you go, if you have the opportunity,
I was just at Kennedy Center last year at the
Wow.
opera. And it took me halfway through the show to be like, oh, subtitles are up there.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. So
yeah, they have the subtitles up there, thankfully, because otherwise, it's usually in a different language. So yes, I love the opera. I love country music. So I don't present like your regular Brooklyn girl at times. But I guess it's a testament that you never can tell, about people just because of where they're from or how they grew up. People are unique, and
that's funny.
That's me.
That's funny. I think I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. Not saying I'll never get there, but I'm not there yet. So Shari, you talk about feeling this call to ministry. And I think it's important in this podcast that I always want to remind people what ministry is. But for you, what's your understanding? If you were to give a Shari Loveday definition for the word ministry, what would that be?
It's anything that I'm doing that's creating space for healing, freeing, enlightening, comforting, or positioning. So if any of those things is happening for a person when they're in my presence, whether I'm talking or whether I'm hugging them or whether I'm silent, just sitting with them, if healing, freeing, enlightening, positioning, comforting, if any of those things are happening, and that's not an exhaustive list, right? Because I think human beings we're so complex and we have different needs depending on the situation. But if I am ministering to the needs of someone else with something that I'm doing, if I am filling a need or creating room for that need to be filled, I'm ministering.
Wow. I love that. I've heard different definitions. Of course, with the title of the podcast, I've asked quite a bit of people the same question. I love your definition. I may borrow that. But I will give you credit. But I love the fact that you say it in terms of the impact it's having on others. And it sounds like that's not confined, obviously, to a church setting, right?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like I said, growing up the way that I did, when I heard the call to ministry, that just meant pastoral ministry. There was no other thing that could mean. And so God had been calling me all my life, but because there was no context in my mind for a woman being a pastor, I just couldn't hear the call. Yeah. And it was until I moved here to Maryland and saw female I had seen them when I was older in New York City, but not in any way where it would dawn on me that this could be a thing. And so I've been ministering all my life.
Yeah, I love that.
I had been ministering all my life, but I didn't know it. And I didn't understand this call because there was only this very narrow context for ministry that I was exposed to. And as soon as that opened up, I realized, one, I'd been ministering all my life, and two, I've been called to be a minister, right? Yeah. And that means so many different things, and my career absolutely displays that. The other thing that it is really, really very much connected to my ministry is it is almost as if I'm in the services, because God deploys me wherever, whenever. And my answer is yes. It's never, but I'm comfortable here, but if he deploys me, I go. So that's also an important part, and I say of my ministry because, you know, certainly maybe not everyone's ministry is set up that way, and maybe not, God is not calling everyone in that specific manner. But for me, my career clearly shows that there's nowhere that I won't go for him, and there's nowhere he won't send me.
Yeah. As we talked about in the opening, is you quite a lot of varied experiences, and I want to go to something you said. You said, okay, so your children, you were homeschooling them, and it gave you the chance to hear and to finally accept this call from God, right?
Yeah.
So you did the bachelor's in religion, but it's that master's in marriage and family therapy. You said that was life changing. Talk about that. Why was that the one that was life changing for you? Not the study of the first two, but why was this one, this degree, particularly impactful?
So that's really interesting because each degree that I have worked on has brought a different element into my life. The bachelor's in religion taught me about temperance, which was a very important element that I needed in my life and ministry. Because I'm one of those that I can be a workaholic very, very easily. And so that taught me temperance. It also taught me that when I take care of God's business, he'll always take care of mine. And that was a really important thing that I learned. But the master's in marriage and family therapy was life-changing. It was life-altering because family trauma. I've been dealing with family trauma and had no idea. I live with anxiety and had no idea until I started studying it. And so it changed the dynamic of my own family. It made me a better mother. It made me a better wife. It made me a better minister because it opened my eyes to what people bring into the room when they walk in. They bring in their family. And sometimes we're sitting at the boardroom table and we want to strangle each other. But it's not that I want to strangle you. It's I want to strangle your mama for what your mama did to you that's got you cutting up and acting like this. So it made me a better everybody, every piece of me that exists. It made me better. And so that's why I say that one was, it was life-changing. My marriage is benefited. My motherhood is benefited. As an educator, I'm better. Like just across the board, just made me a better person altogether.
I heard you talk about. I talked about this before we even started recording. I was in Miami. I was speaking somewhere. My wife messaged me and she's like, "You got to turn on this service. This person is speaking very real in a very real way," and that was you. And you talked about your own journey, and as we're talking now I'm understanding the connection. Right? It's interesting how did your own journey, when you connected with that piece of that educational part of it, right? Mm-hmm. How did that then shape what you would do next in the work that you were going to do?
So, all right. So a big part of what happened in me becoming a therapist is I began to understand myself better. One of the major realizations that I had was I have been living for proof my entire life. I share this and have shared it, but I'm the last of 4 children. And it was expected that my parents would not have any more children. They were finished making babies. And my dad actually said after my brother, if my wife gets pregnant again, is either a jacket or me gone to the madhouse. And that simply means it's not my baby or I have lost my mind. And so when my mom turned up pregnant with me, his coworker said, "So which is it?" And that was the punchline of a joke that they would share, or that my dad would share. He would, when people commented on how many children they had, he would say, "Well, let me just tell you." And they were like, and I wouldn't realize until I was 40 years old that I have been walking around with the negative thought that I'm not supposed to be here. I better prove that it's really good that I was made. And that has altered my life in many ways. that caused me to seek ministry on grand stages instead of just ministry that God was calling me to. It caused me to want people to acknowledge my anointing. And you know that in the faith tradition I come from, that does not always happen for me as a female. And it caused a lot of unrest. But the biggest thing that it caused was I did not believe in me. And I needed the proof that I belonged here. And that created a lot of discontentment, sadness. I would struggle with mild depression throughout most of my 20s and 30s. And it's because I was having an existential crisis and had no idea where it was stemming from. I don't think my parents meant any harm. It was a funny anecdote that they would tell. But as a child, I internalized, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. Well, let me make sure they know it's really good I'm here. So going through this process to become a therapist and going and seeking my own therapy, because the program that I came to, they're like, they were like, don't just become a therapist. You need to go and have therapy so you feel what it's like from a client's perspective. And so I went to therapy. I discovered this life-shattering thing and I was able to heal. And I'm telling you now, it would be a few months later that the God would be like, yep, we're done with pastoral ministry. Move on. And it would have, I don't know what would have happened to me if I didn't make peace and heal, right? Because what ended up happening is when I walked away from pastoral ministry, I walked away like clean, clear, no questions. I was good to go. And the thing God said to me is, I'm taking you from a very public ministry to a completely confidential ministry. Ooh. There will be no, there won't be any applause. There won't be a standing O. There won't be any of that because you've got to keep your mouth shut about the healing that you are facilitating for people. You can't talk about it. I wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to do quiet, powerful ministry and be completely content with that if I had not settled. I no longer need to prove that it is good that I'm here. So that's the biggest impact that me going through that program and coming to understand myself better and what makes me tick and why do I need achievement after achievement after achievement? Oh, I've been proving that it's good that I'm here. And now that I'm no longer proving that, oh, child, I don't care if y'all clap. I don't care if y'all see it. I don't care. I don't care. It makes no difference whether people acknowledge this thing, this calling, this anointing, this oil, this grease that's all over me. I know it's there. I know what it's for. He deploys me. And whenever he deploys me, freedom is afoot. And I just say, okay, God, who needs to get free today? Is it me? Because sometimes it's me, right? Is it somebody else or is it all of us? Okay. And that's it.
Wow. Our guest today is Shari Loveday. And as you hear, like it sounds like your ministry, God's freed you to be to help others experience and for you to help facilitate freedom.
Correct.
And as you share that, it's so interesting how many of us, we don't understand the journey of our own freedom, And so we may miss what our real ministry is because we're doing something else to get that freedom rather than processing our own journey of freedom.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think what I love is that God can use us anyway, because I think all throughout that God was using me. But honestly, there was a time, I launched Purpose Girl Ministries, and that's currently still my business today. I'm, doing business as Lovewell Family Therapy, doing business as Lovewell Publishing, all that. But Purpose Girl Ministries is the ministry I launched, and in the name is purpose. And I didn't fully understand my purpose. And again, it was in this master's degree, first 3 fundamental classes. In one of those classes, they asked to do a visual project that would explain why you want to be a therapist. And I prayed over it, talked to God about it, and he led me to Isaiah. I've anointed you to bust the door open of the jail, let the captives out, turn the light on, bind up the brokenhearted. And immediately God said, your purpose is not to be a pastor. Your purpose is not to be a teacher. Your purpose is not to be a mother. Your purpose is not to be a therapist. Your purpose is to be an instrument that helps set people free.
Yeah.
You will do that in any space you walk into. You will do that on a flight, going to a speaking engagement. You will do that wherever you are, because that is your purpose. That is who you are, not what you do. It's who you are. That's what I do. I set people free through you, but you are the instrument. So being able to wrap my brain around that, wherever God deploys me, I can go, because now I'm not going for the accolades. I'm also not going for the money. I'm not going for the money, but guess what? That money follows me.
Yeah.
That money follows me. It's so crazy, because when I first launched, and this is what I started to say, when I first launched Purpose Girl, I was trying to find multiple streams of income. Like, I was doing all the things. Right now, I got 4 streams of income, and I just like fell into every last one. Like, it's just, everything came together in the most perfect way, because I said, okay, God, what are we doing next? Okay, God, what are we doing next? And so it's the speaking engagements, it's the books, it's a podcast, and it just all came together in the most beautiful way, but it came organically out of my purpose.
I love that. Now, Shari, this is amazing. I want to talk about those streams of income. But as you've pursued this, have you found, and no, there's a fine answer, but yes would be a better for the conversation. Have you found that there are people who have experienced similar journeys or similar wrestlings with you that that you're getting a chance to minister to? You talk about your own journey of, I need to prove myself. Are you finding people with similar stories, similar challenges as you have moved into your ministry?
100%. And it's like what you said, when you turned on, your wife said to you, man, she's talking so real. Mm-hmm. The other piece of my ministry is that God calls me to lay my cupboards bare. Mm-hmm. A lot, so that other people would get the freedom that they need. I'm very much, if you look at Christian scriptures, you'll see that a lot of the prophets, God would call them to live a certain way, and they were the object lesson.
Yes,
they were what God was trying to tell his people. That's what my life is. My life is, he calls me to do something, and then he calls me to lay my cupboards bare about that thing that I did, that journey, how difficult it was, how I made a mistake. And like, he calls me to tell people not what I've read, but what I've lived. And so, yes, I often meet people who, you would be surprised how many people are living for proof.
I may
or
not
maybe
be.
You wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
But yet so many people are living for proof, because maybe they grew up with a parent that was highly critical and was never enough for them. Or maybe they have a similar birth story where, maybe whatever it is. But so many people are living for proof because they really don't believe they're enough. And trauma is oftentimes at the root of that. The way we are treated, the way we are spoken to in adverse childhood experiences can create an atmosphere where people don't love themselves, don't think they're enough, don't think well of themselves. So I come across, within therapy spaces, when I go to speak or preach somewhere, so many in my classrooms. There are children who don't know how amazing they are for whatever reason. So yes, I come across lots of people, and whenever I do, I lay my cupboards bare. That's my ministry. That's what I should have called it. I should have called Lay Your Cupboards Bare Ministry. But that is how I teach and preach. I teach and preach from an experiential place.
Yeah, I think and I think for a lot of people, that's good to know. The journey God has you on, the ministry that that you find at the end, as if in the midst of that journey, there's someone who will connect with that, and you realize, this is who God sent me for, someone who is dealing with the same challenge, dealing with the same struggle, dealing with the same questions that I've wrestled with over the course of my journey.
Yeah, because sometimes people don't even know until they hear it echoed somewhere.
That's right.
People don't even know certain things are what's in their way until they hear it somewhere else and it resonates with them and they're like, oh man. So yeah, I think it's an important, everybody's not called to that, and that's fine. But yeah, that's definitely a large part of my ministry for sure.
Yeah. Shari, I want to shift gears a little bit, help people understand some of the nuts. How did you start Purpose Girl Ministries? How did you start the things that you did? Like, give help, because someone might be, okay, you know what, she's good at that stuff, but I don't know how to get things started off the ground, organize any of this business stuff. Kind of talk to us about that.
So going back to me being a lifelong learner, when I realized I wanted to start a business and I was a stay-at-home mom. I did not have any money. I didn't have big money to start a business. I went out and got books.
Give us a book. Give us a book that you recommend. Sorry, I know it.
No. Profit First is a book that I would recommend.
That's a good book right there.
That's a really, really good book. What's another one I would recommend? Nolo. Oh man. So I actually had Purpose Girl and I had a nonprofit at the time.
Okay.
And so there's a company called Nolo, and they put out different books about how to do different things. So I read one about how to start a nonprofit. I read one about LLCs. If anything, I will send you the resources so that when this gets uploaded, you have that, you could put it in comments or something like that. But I went out and I got books about the structure of an LLC and how to do it, because I couldn't pay a lawyer. I couldn't pay a legal Zoom. I couldn't pay anybody to do it for me. So I did a lot of research on the internet, and I got books to help me understand what kind of business structure I was looking at, so that when I would now launch my practice, I realized, I don't need a whole nother business entity. I can do business as, right? So I can get a DBA. And so all of these things I learned in books, because there's no part of me that's a business major. There's no part of me that even took a course in business, because I don't lean that way. I lean the creative way, right? But I am a voracious reader. And so if it's in a book, I can find it. If it's online in print, I can find it. So that is how I got my business, the practical business part of it done, is I read a book. Now, legal Zoom and things like that, they're not super costly. So if you do have money, I would tell you go that route, because you save yourself some legwork going that route for sure. But I didn't have it. So I had to DIY my business. So I did that. What I would recommend is whoever does your taxes for the year, definitely run the business taxes through someone. Don't fool with the IRS. That's not something I ever took on, because I'm not good with numbers. The other thing I would suggest is, if you launch your business and you find that you've got a lot of volume of work or clients or what have you, get a virtual assistant. Get somebody that can help you do some of the day-to-day minutia, so that you can stick to the ministry, that you can, do the real meat and potatoes of the business, whatever it is. Free yourself up if you can afford to. But for me, literally, it was all DIY. Wow. I didn't have an assistant. The one thing that I did was our personal accountant would also run my business numbers as well for, taxes and your annual report and all of that.
Yeah, that's good. Shari, we bring up a good point, which is either you pay with time or you pay with money when you're getting started. So if you don't have the money, you might have to invest some more time, do that research, look things up, but there's always a way. There's a way. There's a
Yep.
way.
And another thing that I would say is that I'm finding as a private practice owner, I'm a part of several therapy groups. It's not therapy groups, Facebook groups where therapists is specifically for therapists. And I'm learning a lot just from that.
That's good. That's good.
So, you can do your research and you can also be in spaces where other people are doing what you're doing and you get to hear their conversations. You get to ask your own questions. And that's also very helpful.
Network. That's good.
Network.
That's good.
Correct.
So give us some, I want to ask you about your work as a therapist and building a practice, because it's one thing to be a therapist and to work for someone, but you started building your own practice. Like, what are some of the steps that you took that you would say I would advise other people who are looking to grow their services, the service side of their ministry-based business? What are some steps that you would say here's some things to do?
Get a coach. Get a coach. When I started my practice, so for many years, this is why, I almost told you, I don't know that I'm the best person for this podcast because
you told me that.
Right. Because for many years, I couldn't charge people for anything.
Ooh.
Nothing.
Come on now.
I couldn't, especially if I thought it was ministry.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't charge people for it. Right. Because I came up in faith tradition and family and culture, West Indian culture, that basically said, if we're family, give us a huge discount or it's free. I came up in a faith tradition that said, freely you have received, freely give.
When you said it, your Jamaican accent came out just a little bit more when you said that. Sorry.
Yeah, because I'm saying it how I heard it. Saying it how I heard it. But with you're charging us, but with, right? So that kind of thing. And then faith traditions that say, freely you have received, freely give. And all these messages that demonize making money.
Mm-hmm.
Demonize you sustaining yourself with your gifts, right? And so I went into private practice like, I don't know what to charge people. I don't like just, and knowing that I was going to be in practice. And if somebody cancels, I'm like, oh, it's okay. I understand. But if I do that, I don't eat. My family doesn't eat. So that couldn't work. I got a coach who is a financial therapist and a money mindset coach.
Oh, I love that.
When I tell you she got my money mindset right, her name is Lindsay Bryan Pavin. She got my money mindset right. She helped me see that marketing wasn't me doing any underhanded things to get business, but it was me simply saying, I can help. Here's where you can find me. People who need my help need to be able to find me. But before, in my mind, marketing was some skeevy salesman thing that I had to do. Like, I'm so not for all of that I don't even do fundraisers for my kids at school. I do not like asking people for money. I do not like selling anything. And so that's how I kind of would have gone into my business. But my coach, man, she changed everything. She got me right. So now I'm able to have boundaries. Boundaries are super important when you're in business. Boundaries around your time, boundaries around your money, boundaries around your practices. And so that is one major thing I would tell people to get. The other thing I would say is do it scared. I did it scared. I walked away from a pastoral ministry job that was a steady income. And I maybe had 4 clients when I did that. I did it scared. The caveat that I do want to share, because I need everybody to understand that God has set my life up such that my husband has been, for that 9 years that I was home, he was the sole provider. Right? Whatever I made was kind of just like I put it back into the business and what have you. And then after I went to be chaplain and pastor and launched my business, he's still the primary provider. And so it gives me room to go where God deploys. I recognize that that is privilege. Mm-hmm. And I understand that everybody doesn't have that. The single mom listening to me doesn't have a safety net so that she could just do it scared and go all in and not have any clients. And I get that, right? But take one step, put one foot in front of the other. Do that scared, just piece by piece. Build it build the side, let it be a side hustle while you're doing the main thing. If you have to have that income coming in, grow it and limit that piece by piece. Grow this, make your full-time smaller, grow your part-time, make your full-time smaller until your part-time becomes your full-time. Whatever you have to do, take step by step, but do it scared. I started Purpose Girl Ministries completely scared because, again, I didn't believe that I was enough. I didn't believe that I could do any of this, but I did it scared. And that was literally the first video that I ever put out. Y'all, I'm doing this scared. And I just started. So do it scared. And if you can afford to, get a coach. If you can't get a coach, find somebody that's doing what you do and ask them if you can shadow them.
That's good. That's good. That's such good advice. And I'm so glad you said this. So many people face challenges with pricing. Shari, you can imagine so many of us, because we have a heart for people. And I think there's a lot of miseducation on pricing. And, I thought about this the other day. If you, and you've written books, if someone asked you to give them 100 books for free, right? You'd be like, they would almost be embarrassed to ask that question because that's physical. It took you time to write it. But I think we have to help people understand giving away your time for free is just as bad. Like, that's time you don't get with your family to do some of the things that you want to do and need to do. And I think we have to start valuing our time as much as we value the things that we've produced.
100%. I think we also need to be able to create price points that give us room to still enjoy time with our family. If I saw people for $30 a session, I'd never see my family again.
Wow.
Right? So I have to price. And that's one of the things my coach taught me is you start with the life you want and work your way back, dividing to figure out how many hours you need to work in order to get that life that you want. Like, don't start with, okay, well, I guess everybody is charging. No, start with, if I need to be making $90,000, what does it look like for me to get to $90,000 and not be working every second of the day so that I can't spend time with my family? I can't prioritize my health. I can't check in with myself and be centered and at peace. What does it look like to make what I need to make to sustain my life and have a good quality of life?
Yeah.
What do I need? And if I'm going to give away an hour, what makes it worth it to give away an hour? The second thing that I do when I think about my pricing is, I just sat here and told you that my becoming a therapist, that degree cost me $60,000+. And I would pay it again and again and again. Why? Because it changed my life for the better. That is what I do for people. I'm an instrument that helps God change their lives. And for me, that is invaluable. That is invaluable. So I couldn't even put a value on it, but it's definitely not going to be $30.
Shari, that was good. That was good. You've been hanging around that pricing coach.
I'm telling you, she set me right.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think it's just for so many of us, God's called us to ministry, and some of us, we kind of heard the words wrong. We think martyrdom, like we're killing ourselves literally in the midst of trying to help others. And we start with other people's pockets rather than your own life. What do you want? What do you want? So this is so
not
good.
Sustainable.
Yeah.
You cannot sustain ministry when you are working and burning at both ends of the wick. You cannot sustain it.
And think about this. The people who you're saying, I have to do it cheap or whatever, for them, eventually you're not doing it for them because you've burnt out. You can't sustain it. You shut it down. No one wins when you don't charge enough.
You shut it down. Your family's mad at you. You don't have any friends left because you're always working to try to make enough money to survive. It's not sustainable. And the truth of the matter is, as a therapist, If I come across people with hardship, I do have sliding scale, but that's not the majority of my practice. It could never be, because then I could not afford to do what I do.
That's good.
So yeah, absolutely. We got to start with the life that we need and want. And I make no apologies for, I'm a very hands-on mother. I don't want to miss a thing. I don't want to miss the basketball game. I don't want to miss any of that. So just before I went back to teaching, I had told my clients I'm no longer seeing clients in the evening because I'm not going to miss another game. Because at the end of the day, imagine all this healing for everyone else. And then my son grows up with, I don't know if mama actually cares.
Wow.
Right? So no. So I make no apologies. It's like what you just said. When I say yes, this was something that was transformative for me. If I say yes to you, there's a no somewhere else. It's either a no to my family, it's a no to my own health, it's a no to something when I say yes to something else. And so that is one way that I evaluate what I'm going to do. If I'm going to take a speaking engagement, we wanted to jump on this podcast much sooner, but I had to say no to you sooner because I couldn't manage it with everything else that was going on. Because if I had said yes to that, I would have said no to my own mental health in that moment. So that's another thing that helps me create pricing, create content, decide what my calendar will look like. If I'm saying yes to all of this, where's the no? And where's the impact of that no? And am I willing? I'm not willing to say no to my family more often than I say no to other people.
Shari Loveday has been our guest today. And we're not out of questions. I trust you. Trust me. We're out of time today. But Shari, I need you to tell people how they can find your devotionals, how they can find your website, how they can find your podcast. Come on, just give it to us so that.
Absolutely. So the podcast is Black Girl Love Well, and you can find it on any platform that's streaming podcasts. So it's on Apple, it's on Google for the time being, because I know Google is getting ready to go away. It's on iHeart. It's on, I want to say Pandora. It's on, it's on all the platforms. You can find the podcast there. That's Black Girl Love Well. And it's about relationships. And it really, fits for a lot of people. But that's a specific space I carved out for Black girls like me. Mm-hmm. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, Love Well Family Therapy. My website is lovewellfamilytherapy.com. And my books, you can find all of my books on Amazon.
All right, I'm trying to get it all out here. So you folks, those of you watching, you'll see the names coming up on the screen. lovewellfamilytherapy.com.
Yeah.
Love Well. By the way, how did you get that word?
Love Well Family Therapy, because my whole practice is about people loving and being loved well.
I love it. And I think that whole Love Day kind of goes.
Exactly. That helped. That helped.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and honestly, if you go to my website, you'll be able to find everything. You'll be able to find the podcast. You'll be able to find the Instagram. Everything is there. I even have courses where you can boost your emotional intelligence. I have a course out there on that helps benefit your relationships. Because when we are more aware emotionally, when we are more emotionally intelligent, changes the game in our relationships.
Listen, I just want to thank you, Shari, for being on today. You spoke to us. And I think for someone who might be struggling with that whole creating boundaries, etc., and just know, I'll just use your title. Learn to love yourself well in terms of creating your boundaries, pricing well, so that what you do can be sustainable. Because if it can't be sustained, eventually it's going to end and no one's going to benefit. So learn to love yourself well. So thank you so much, Shari.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And go take your ideas, bring them to life.
Thank you for listening to the Monetize Your Ministry podcast with Kimon Hines. For more information, visit our website at www.monetizeyourministrypodcast.com. That's www.monetizeyourministrypodcast.com. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please share this episode with someone who needs it. Let's increase our income and impact.